1938 Lincoln Wheat Penny, often referred to by collectors as the wheat cent, is an extraordinary piece of American numismatic history. Though it might appear like just another small copper coin, its story is deeply tied to the economic conditions, minting practices, and evolving coinage standards of the United States in the late 1930s. The Lincoln Wheat Cent had already been in circulation for nearly 3 decades by 1938, having been introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of President Abraham Lincoln. This was a landmark moment in U.S. coinage, as Lincoln became the very first real person ever depicted on an American coin. Designed by Victor David Brenner, the obverse features Lincoln's portrait, while the reverse proudly carries 2 wheat stalks framing the words 1C and T. These wheat ears represented America's agricultural strength and symbolized prosperity. The year 1938, the world was on the edge of great change. The United States was still emerging from the effects of the Great Depression, and Europe was bracing for the conflicts that would soon erupt into World War II. Coinage production was stable, but mints were producing coins at more conservative numbers compared to the booming mintages of earlier decades. The 1938 wheat penny was struck at 3 mints: Philadelphia Mint, no mint mark, the main production yielding over 156 million coins. What makes the 1938 issue significant is not just its mintage, but also its quality. By this time, the U.S. Mint had perfected much of its cent production, leading to coins with sharper strikes and cleaner details compared to some earlier years. Collectors often note the high-quality Lincoln portraits and defined wheat stalks on many 1938 cents found in uncirculated condition. Another point of interest is the composition. The 1938 penny was struck in 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc, the standard alloy for cents. Before the wartime shift to steel in 1943, these coins have a rich, reddish-brown tone when preserved well, and their natural patina over time makes each example unique. From a historical perspective, the 1938 penny sits at an interesting crossroads. It belongs to the pre-war era but comes just a few years before massive changes in U.S. coinage caused by World War II. Within 5 years, Americans would see the steel penny of 1943, produced because copper was desperately needed for war materials, like shell casings and wiring. Thus, the 1938 penny represents one of the last traditional copper cents before the turbulence of the 1940s. The numismatic market. The 1938 wheat penny is considered a semi-common date, but condition and mint mark make all the difference. Circulated examples usually hold only modest value, but uncirculated specimens, especially those with original red luster, can command significant premiums. The 1938 test is particularly prized among collectors for its lower mintage, high-grade examples certified by professional. 1938 was a transitional time in America's history. The nation was still healing from the Great Depression, which had shaken confidence in the economy, yet optimism was beginning to return as President Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal programs were in full effect. Jobs were slowly reappearing, industry was recovering, and money was again flowing through the hands of ordinary Americans. Against this backdrop, millions of copper Lincoln cents, including the 1938 wheat penny, were minted to serve in everyday commerce. But to understand the importance of the 1938 cent, we must step back to its origins. The Lincoln wheat cent, first struck in 1909, was revolutionary in American coinage. Prior to its release, U.S. coins featured allegorical images, figures like liberty, and symbolic designs that represented ideals rather than real people. Abraham Lincoln, chosen for the centennial of his birth, was the first historical figure to appear on a U.S. coin. His presence on the penny immediately resonated with Americans, symbolizing honesty, perseverance, and unity. By 1938, Lincoln's portrait had already become iconic and firmly rooted in the nation's coinage tradition. The 1938 wheat penny's design had hardly changed since its introduction. The obverse still bore Lincoln's right-facing profile, surrounded by the date on the right. On the reverse, Victor David Brenner's 2 wheat stalks encircled the words 1 cent and United States of America, with E pluribus unum crowning the top. For many Americans during the 1930s, this familiar design represented both tradition and stability. The mintage figures of 1938 tell an important story about production. While 156 million coins were struck in Philadelphia, the Denver Mint produced about 20 million, and the San Francisco Mint struck 15 million. Compared to other years, these numbers were relatively low, reflecting the lingering economic uncertainties and cautious demand for coinage. Because fewer coins were needed in circulation, the 1938 pennies from Denver and San Francisco today attract more attention from collectors. The composition of the 1938 penny was 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. At first glance, this might seem ordinary, but in historical context, it is significant. Just 5 years later, in 1943, the mint would switch to steel plankets, coated with zinc to conserve copper for World War II munitions. That makes the 1938 issue one of the last pre-war classic copper cents, and touched by the material shortages that soon reshaped U.S. coinage. Another layer of history lies in the penny's role in daily American life. In 1938, a single cent carried much more purchasing power than today. For 1 penny, a child might buy a stick of gum, a handful of candy, or even contribute to the cost of a newspaper. These little coins circulated constantly, passing through millions of hands, each transaction tying ordinary people to the broader story of the nation's economy. Fully committed to the war effort, and every aspect of the economy, including coin production, was influenced by the needs of the military. The wheat penny design, created by Victor David Brenner in 1909 to honor President Abraham Lincoln's 100th birthday, had already been in circulation for 36 years by 1945. The obverse front of the coin features Lincoln's right-facing bust, a bold yet humble portrayal of the 16th U.S. president whose leadership during the Civil War saved the Union. The inscriptions in God we trust appear above. Liberty is to the left, and the date 1945 is positioned to the right, depending on the mint location. A mint mark may appear beneath the date. No mint mark for Philadelphia, D for Denver, and S for San Francisco. The reverse back is adorned with 2 curved wheat stalks framing the inscriptions. The Philadelphia Mint struck over 1 billion wheat pennies in 1945.1040, 515,000, to be exact, making it one of the most common dates of the series. Denver produced 266,268,000 coins, and San Francisco minted 181,770,000. This abundance means that most circulated 1945 cents are easy to find today, but pristine, uncirculated examples, especially in high mint state readiness road condition, are much scarcer and more valuable for collectors. The 1945 wheat penny offers more than just numismatic value. It as a tangible relic of a turning point in history. When these coins were released, Germany had surrendered in May 1945, ending the war in Europe, and Japan surrendered in August 1945. Following the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, soldiers were returning home. Industry was shifting from war production to consumer goods, and Americans were entering a period of economic optimism. Circulation. These pennies were part of everyday life, used to buy candy, newspapers, and soda. They jingled in the pockets of guests, factory workers, and school children alike. The wheat design itself, introduced in the early 20th century, carried a sense of tradition and stability qualities the nation greatly valued during and after the war. Collectors especially looked for full red luster, sharp strike details in Lincoln's hair and beard, and clean wheat lines on the reverse. Certain era varieties from 1945 can be valuable, including off-center strikes, cracks, and repunch mint marks (RP-Ms), particularly from the Denver and San Francisco mints. The average circulated 1945 wheat penny is worth only a few cents over face value, but in high mint state grades, values can reach $50, $150 or more. Exceptional examples with brilliant color, flawless surfaces, and rare errors can bring several $100